again my panelists. So Guylain from Internet Society as an IXP expert. Then we have Mr. Mohamed Rudman, who is the CEO of the Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria, Nigeria first and only neutral IXP. Dr. Fiona Asonga, CEO at TESPOC and Board Director at Afrinic. And do we have Dr. Krish here? Dr. Krish, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay, perfect. So Dr. Krish is the CEO of Unicloud Africa Limited, a Pan-African cloud platform dedicated to advancing the continent's digital sovereignty. So it's really great to have you here on this panel. And as Guylain pointed out in his presentation, there are some movement which is happening. And maybe the first question that I might have to you panelists is, are you actually seeing the shift in the respective regions and countries that you are currently operating? Whoever wants to take the question?
Okay. Yes, from Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria, yes, we are seeing the shift in terms of the peering ecosystem, as you mentioned, from the big content providers. Initially, when they come in, usually in those early days, they peer with the route server. And the route server peers with almost everyone at the exchange points. So for example, in Nigeria, we had a mandatory peering agreements where everybody must peer with the route server in the initial days. So almost all operators got interconnected, and that made it simple for the content providers to reach everyone. Eventually, as the service providers start to scale up, we realize that they disconnect from peering with the route server. They start doing a bilateral peering, but through the exchange point, because each of them has a port at the exchange point. And as the traffic scales, what happens usually, they move away from the exchange point platforms into a PNI, private network interconnect, where they physically directly interconnect with each other, which is generally the global trend. But eventually over the years now, some of these big players completely disconnected from the route servers. And therefore, you have to reach out to them as a network operator to peer with them directly through a PNI, not through the exchange point at all. And that, to some extent, where we have seen growth at IXPN, where the traffic will really grow, all of a sudden, we realize the traffic drops. We have seen it this year twice.
Wow.
I don't want to mention, but the traffic goes to huge amount. In fact, we are anticipating to see 3 terabits of traffic early this year. All of a sudden, it dropped to 2.5 terabits per traffic because they went directly to PNI. But that's the general norm. But what is not normal is for the content providers to completely disconnect from the route servers. And that makes it difficult because some of the smaller ISPs in the ecosystem do not know how to really initiate the peering with the content providers. Some of them automate the process. You have to go to, what is it called? Routing, what is it called?
Peering DB?
Peering
DB? No.
Peering DB, correct. You have to go to Peering DB to do the configuration for you to automate. And we realize some of the smaller operators at IXPN do not know how to go about that. So we've been delivering trainings on how to configure Peering DB so that they can initiate the peering with the content providers. Yes.
Well, thank you. Fiona, do you see the same trends in Kenya or in this region?
Yes, they are pretty much the same. Everything he's explained, we actually see the same thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, therefore, the small players, as Mohammed was saying, are the one that are the most impacted, right? Because they don't have the leverage as bigger players to connect to the...
Yes, and for me, from where I see it, I feel that the large content players have been unfair to our region because it is the small service providers that are giving the last mile to our Africans who need to be connected. And therefore, when the big player says that you must have a certain threshold that you meet for us to be able to peer with you, and now we are not peering with the route server, we're going to do it directly with the service providers and of this category. We are struggling with so many things. We want to connect the unconnected. We want to serve the underserved. We want to get as many of our citizens online so that they can benefit from online opportunities that arise, the online jobs and all those digital opportunities that arise. And a lot of the content is sitting on platforms that are now telling us, we can't give you. To a point that, for me, it's going to a point that because every time we do training, and now our training used to be at least 2 times a year, we are doing training almost every month, literally, on just how to, and making sure in that training we're talking about how to configure your gear so that you're able to use the peering DB properly, so that it works for you.
Okay.
And while we are doing that, we have cognizant that a lot of the key platforms are pulling back. And pulling back is the word I use because the policies that they create are not serving our region anymore. Not in the way that they should.
Okay. So do you see somewhat a return to how it was before, where a lot of people were using transit to have access to those content, and now the fact that it's not easy to do peering anymore? Do you see now, like, are we taking step backwards?
Okay. We are taking steps forward, but again, in some areas, we are moving back.
Okay.
The fact that they come to our region to peer is a plus for us. But now give us access to the content. I cannot come and say we are going to have a meal, and then I put the plates, I get you seated, but I keep the food in the kitchen. That is what they are doing to us. So when the food is in the kitchen, it is now the rules of how do I serve rude man? Fufu. And probably he was looking forward to this meal because he knew he's coming for a proper African meal. So it is nice that I've organized the meal, invited people to the table, but I'm not putting the food on the table in the way that I should so that we serve. And I need them to reconsider. I would like to, without mentioning names, because it's happening across the board on the big platforms in our space, I would like to challenge them that if they truly are serious about being part of the African ecosystem, then they need to open up and change their peering policies so that even the small service providers can access. So while they are encouraging bilateral peering, can they still continue to peer with the root servers?
Okay. Yes, Mohammed?
Yes, okay. So, really, why are they doing what they are doing, right? Initially, in the early days, those networks come in, especially Google, for example, to support the local ecosystem. They peered almost everywhere. So what I realized is that over the years, the number of networks in the world has significantly increased.
Yeah.
And then you have smaller service providers that are coming in, and some of them do not have the right technical skills. To be honest with you, at IXPN, we had to consistently implement filters because some of them will leak their default route onto the route server. All of a sudden, the internet traffic start passing through the networks. In fact, in Lagos, we had an experience with one particular service provider that leaked the default route, and that created a major disruption for Google. So when I found out from them is that one is that they want the end users to have the best user experience. That is why they are appearing at the exchange point. to really localize the traffic. Two, to get those users to connect at the lowest cost for the end users as well as for Google. That's why they have all the caches across Africa so that it's faster, it's cheaper. The third one is in terms of control of the BGP peering session. So by the time they connect through the route server, it means that whoever is managing the route server manages the networks behind the route server. And therefore, if those networks are misbehaving, because one person misbehaves behind the route server, it affects all others. And therefore, that's why they're encouraging, especially the big ones, to do a direct bilateral peering through the exchange point. So they really want to control the policies. Another thing is in some of the developing ecosystems, mostly they have one route server, some have two. We have instances where, for example, our route server is in one of the data centers and we have a fiber cut, and therefore the other people peering from all other data centers cannot access the route server. It means whoever is peering through the route server is not accessible. So it's based on these things that they decided that, look, they have to find a way to balance all this. So I think as Africans, what we need to really do is try as much as possible to build capacity, to do the hand-holding for the operators, to ensure that they are pairing with those big companies. Some of them, they are all not strict. Some of them are still pairing with the route servers. I don't want to start mentioning names. Some of them, by the time they connect to the exchange point, already they have a selective pairing policy where they don't pair with the route server. They will announce it in the mailing list of the exchange point to say, hey, I'm here at IXPN. If you want to pair with me, reach out to me. Some, they make it simple. Some, you have to fulfill a certain criteria in terms of volume of traffic that they require for you to pair. So what happens is that for the smaller service providers, it means they can't access that content because their traffic threshold does not reach the requirement of the content providers. And therefore, they have to pass that traffic through transit. The only advantage to some extent that the traffic is still localized is because those are smaller ISPs that they usually buy from another higher ISP within the country. And that ISP is already connected to those content providers. Therefore, to the smaller ISP is transit, to the larger ISP is still a domesticated traffic. But in reality, that does not encourage the smaller operators to scale. It means that those that are big will continue get opportunity to scale up. And that's why in most of the African countries, you see the dominance of major players that are controlling almost everything. In Nigeria, 80% of the internet users are on two mobile network operators. In the entire ISP ecosystem carries only 1% of the internet users. 99% is on the mobile network operators. And therefore, these big players need to find a way to encourage the smaller operators. But you see, there is the Pareto's role. Most of these big players, they are looking at the most efficient way to deliver this content. If they can reach 80% of the population through PNIs, private network interconnect with the big players, is good for them. The smaller one is left for you to sort yourself out. So it's left for the community themselves to really work hard together to see how they can collaborate and train themselves to acquire those skills that are required when it comes to pairing with the big telecommunication companies. For big content providers.
Okay.
Thank you.
I see Dr. Chris is reacting. Dr. Chris, as a solution provider, so cloud solution, what's your take on those dynamics which is happening, and how does it impact cloud operators, for example?
If the peering happens in a better way, the cloud works in a better way, in a very simple way. That's what I take it. But with all the technical reasons, what Mr. Mohammed also explained, it also contributes a lot, on data localization part. So when we localize the data, now if you look at a week back from Central Bank of Nigeria, there's a new amendment on data localization. So some of those things get affected by, the varying policy frameworks. So I might think that why can't we look at a uniform policy on peering itself rather than having various arrangements? Though technically various arrangements can bring in value, I don't deny it, but how that will help having the data domicile, that's where I take it.
That's a good point, and I don't. Maybe other cloud service operators might have the same problem as well, because they all need robust peering for actually to deliver their services. And if that's not happening, or if now because of the fact that an IXP which was before quite dynamic and robust is now facing some challenges because of scaling down. Yes, Mohammed.
Yeah. So if I may add, another thing apart from the collaboration and the training, for the members to benefit from that, for example, Google has the Google, what is it called?
VPP?
We said?
VPP, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Verified Peering Partner.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Microsoft have the Microsoft Azure peering service. Almost all of them have something similar. So for the IXPs themselves, so like at IXP, we want to become some of those partners so that we can now integrate the smaller operators into our network. So for one of the major content providers, we did that. So for almost all the smaller service providers, they get the services through us and we are peering with them so that we ensure that those smaller service providers are not isolated. So I'll encourage all the major IXPs to really go into getting those services so that they can participate and allow the smaller ISPs to benefit.
Okay. That's it. Gila, you want to react to that?
Yeah, again, I mean, the discussion should be probably heading to what are the solutions, I would say. But I think from someone who has a background in running an exchange point, I think having your house in order first is very important. So the route server should always have this route origin validation, making sure that whoever connects there is validated. So they should be announcing whatever they are announcing. So that's very important. Then the choice of who does the multilateral peering through the route server is again in the prerogative of who connects there. So we as, again I say we as a IXP operator, you should always leave the liberty to the network to choose whatever they want to do, either multilateral, either bilateral. It stays within their prerogative. But the house should be in order, making sure that everything is sanitized, nothing is leaked, so that that ecosystem is really good for those even bigger providers to come in your ecosystem.
Yes.
Okay, so excellent one. That's another thing, honestly. At IXPN, we are manners compliant, mutually acceptable routing security, norms for routing security, right? And that really helps us because initially what happened was that some of the services we are pairing with, for example, Netflix, we keep receiving flags that the IP addresses are not validated. Okay, so when we implemented this, we realized that there are one or two service providers that, in fact, that are delisted in Afrinic. They have not paid their dues, but they are still using the resources, the IP resources and the ASN. And we clearly had to notify them, look, find a way to resolve this, or we disconnect them. And eventually, we had to disconnect them. After like a period of 1 year, they went back to Afrinic, I think, validate themselves and came back. So as he rightly said, it's very important for the IXPs themselves to do what is right so that they encourage the big players to participate.
Okay. So this can be a good incentive to implement OPKI at the route server,
Correct.
but also to encourage ISP to implement OPKI. Great. I want to now jump on the question of remote peering that you brought up, Gila. So remote peering has been there for ages, right? People have been doing it for many years. But do you think now the fact that we are having more obstacles for small operators to peer it will encourage that remote peering practice and therefore add, add latency, deteriorate quality of experience.
So I think as long as that ecosystem, which is on the edge of the internet, does not have an exchange point, and start developing its ecosystem, that remote peering will stay there. So either remote peering or virtual peering will more or less be a sanction to that ecosystem. So to some extent, transit will be the default way to get to those content until a foreseeable future whereby maybe those content will come closer to the market. But again, I don't see a remote peering disappearing instantly, because it is I would say the best way, not the best way, but one of the ways to reach those content. Another thing which is also, I think, one of the reasons behind why the trend going to VPPs is picking up is, if I put the shoes of the content provider, it's the ability for them to best serve the network. So remote peering was a problem, or is still a problem, for them to deliver to the best way possible the content, because there are many ways to deliver that content, either remote peering or sending you a cache in your network. So if you reach a certain level, they will send you a cache, but they will not want to send you a cache and then and then see that you are appearing from another network. So they will not know how best to serve you. Is it the cache that we have, or is it through the remote peering? So to some extent, remote peering is a problem for them, I mean, the content provider, but it will still be there.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Maybe back to Krish, who is online. So we used to say, well, we keep saying that we need more cloud operators in our region for us to have more options to host our data centers. Our data in data centers. So how do you foresee the horizon, Dr. Krish, in terms of the ability of having African cloud operators in this context of, tension between maybe very large, hyperscale coming to Africa, maybe monopolizing the market? How do you see the growth of small cloud operators?
The only way is, see, nobody is against hyperscalers, correct? The fact is this: when we are building an African, or when you are dreaming and building an African digital economy, you cannot build it on somebody else's house. You don't know where the data resides. So you don't know the rules of that land. What is that data protection law says? For example, if it is in the US, how many of us know that what is the US data protection laws? If it is Nigeria, Kenya, or South Africa, we know what it says all about. And if there's an issue, we can go to their offices bare minimum and find and resolve issues. But it is a collaboration in the industry that need to happen in a more better way to enable the local/regional cloud operators, so that the ecosystem comes up in a proper way. Otherwise, you are not going to own your own data. You will be on somebody else's mercy at your own data, whether it is hyperscaler or somebody else, it doesn't matter, correct? So it is not that Africa is against them. If you want to have the African business, at least build sizable 4 data centers in 4 regions, east, west, south, and north, at least. So that, this resides here, we know it resides here, we know how to deal with it, and at least that will also help a lot of other related factors in the industry. Moreover, it helps capacity building. On a layman's language, it helps a lot of employment opportunities for our people in the continent. That is more important here. Of course, technology grows to the next level, and the other factors also increases.
Totally. Yes. I see. Yeah, Gila?
Yeah, I have not run any cloud. So I want to put this disclaimer forward. So I think there are two things, but when I look at it from afar, I think there are two things that are very important for our cloud, our own grassroots cloud service provider to flourish. First of all, you need to reach economies of scale. And the way to reach an economies of scale is through automation. So we are always thinking in that old mindset of doing things manually. So you need to reach a level where you have 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 clients, but you cannot reach that level if you don't automate. So automation is very key. The second, I think, challenge that we still have as a region is energy. The cost of energy is still high comparatively to other regions. So if we can find a solution for our energy cost effectively, we will be able to run facilities that can host those cloud service providers. But automation is very key and energy is very key.
And I guess added to that, terrestrial connectivity should be something that
Yes,
we
yes,
unleash.
yes,
Yes.
Yes, across border. As you mentioned, we are fragmented infrastructure-wise.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to have a facility in last week we were in Cotonou for Benin probably service provider to benefit from Nigeria, and then probably Nigeria from another neighboring country. So that cross-border infrastructure is still missing.
Okay.
Okay, can I? add
Sure,
to it?
sure.
Okay. You see, in the early days, is lack of data center in almost the entire African continent. When we started operating in 2006, 2007, there were no single carrier-neutral data centers in Lagos, for example. But over the years, we've seen emergence of more and more data centers. That gives opportunity for cloud service providers to co-locate in those data centers. But as you look at it now, substantial part of African countries do not have a single data center, not even one. So in those countries, it's going to be extremely difficult to have local cloud service providers. The second one is the technical skills required. He just mentioned what you need is automation to scale up. You need the right skills and knowledge for you to scale up. Substantial part of our people in Nigeria, from COVID till now, the key technical guys in the banking industry, in the ISP industry, has moved out of the country in droves. They call it JAPA in Nigeria. So the technical skills are required
Drain.
somewhere. Correct. They move out of the country. So that's a major bottleneck. Another thing is the trust, because even governments do not patronize the local cloud service providers. Most of them, they host outside Nigeria. So we have to push for a policy in Nigeria for government to start hosting locally. So in 2023, there was a policy that was passed by the president to ensure that all government services are now hosted in Nigeria. Still, having the policy is something different from implementing the policy, correct. Recently, last week, the Central Bank of Nigeria also moved a policy that all service providers, banking industry service providers, must host their content locally in local data centers. Yeah. So, which is fantastic. So for me, my own take is you can't stop the big players from playing. They have the ability to scale. Mm-hmm. If you're hosting with Amazon Web Services, if you want whatever amount of size of capacity you need, you just, within few clicks, you have the required compute, memory, and hard drive, right?
And cheap as well.
Yes. So for local data center, for local cloud service providers, that's going to be extremely difficult. Yeah. Why? Because of funding. Most in Africa is where we purchase our handheld devices, mobile phones. We do an outright purchase. Outside Nigeria is an economy of trust, where you can buy it and pay gradually. So the same thing. Outside Africa, yes, you can buy. Do you buy phones here at loan? With loan? You have to buy outright. You have to.
The only phones that are offered on loan are the phone program M-Copper that Safaricom started, but it's a very low end of phone that you pay over a 12-month period.
So imagine if you're outside, you want 100 Dell servers, you get it at a loan. In Africa, you want to be a cloud service provider, you want 100 Dell servers, you have to drop the cash. You get. And for you to scale, when somebody orders more space, you have to make an international order, wait, comes through customs, through a process. There is a different environment. So those are some of the major challenges. And I think government has to be play a critical role in this, in ensuring that, one, they patronize local data centers and become the anchor tenants, then push all the educational institutions to host all their contents also locally. That will now drive the volume. And if you are driving the volume, you generate the right skills, and then you are able to scale.
Have a ripple effect. Yes.
Just to add on that conversation, and I think maybe there is a way that government is pushing the big tech companies to patronize the local data centers, and in a way that supports the local ecosystem, but it's yet to be felt. And this is not with any pan, but I think I like President Trump because he made one of the big tech companies finally, that we had been following up for so long, finally get into a Kenyan data center about in the month of May, about a month ago. And I think that was really big news, and having them, now we are still trying to get them to get into the exchange. We've been talking to them for 10 years. And so the fact that the war with Trump and the attack within the Arab states on data centers is a wake-up call. So if you don't see value in coming to set up in our local data centers, I think soon you're going to see the value and the importance of it. And I'm not saying that I support what is going, but I'm seeing the positive side of it. There is something good coming out of everything that is happening. And honestly, if our governments do not see that change that is happening and the shift, because when one comes, soon another is going to come and another, and get into the countries that have the data centers. But more importantly, we need to see, the same way we are trying to see about the countries with exchange points, the countries with data centers is something we have to work on, because the chances are a proper functioning exchange point, we get, when we look at the time when we were running it ourselves in the office and when we went into a data center, and Rudman will attest to it, the feeling is very different. The quality of service is very different. What you're able to offer peering members is very different. You grow. You're now focusing on different things, value addition, and not on the mundane tasks of making sure the generator is working, the power has gone off, you're looking for, all that stuff. It's important, but when you are in a data center, someone else is taking care of that part of the equation. So you have other things to be able to take care of. Then you can now get into capacity building and training. And at this point also, I would want to challenge exchange point operators who are operating in environments where they're finding challenges to reach out so that we can see how to support. I know that I work closely with Uganda and Rwanda, and together we've been able sometimes to assist each other address some of these issues of training, capacity building, and sometimes even negotiating with the big tech on getting into the facilities. We help each other on that negotiation, because we realize when we go alone, they don't see you as valuable, and some will still tell us, even as KXP, you're very small.
You're very small, yeah. So it makes sense if operators and IXP's partner together to talk to those big guys. I would like to open the floor to questions, so please free to jump in.
Amrish, can I go?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Amrish and the panelists. I have 2 questions. Number 1 is about the new, what I'll call, is it the phenomenon we are seeing where we have multiple internet exchange points? For example, in Lagos, or Nigeria, there are several internet exchange points. There seems to be competition now. And probably this competition also may have impact of the decision being made by some of the content provider. The other element I also want to maybe put on the table is that we push for data centers, but it looks like because we don't have enough content, okay, for them to have business, look like most of them are now switching to hosting exchange points and getting involved in this remote peering, all these things to survive. So, your thought on these issues?
So in terms of competition, you're right. But generally, competition is good for the ecosystem. The only concern I have with such competition is one, sometimes it can bring fragmentation in the ecosystem, because if you have 3 different internet exchange points operating in the same location, and you have some of the content providers peering in one place, some are peering in the other location, it means that for a small service provider, he must pair with the 2 exchanges or 3 exchanges for him to get all the content that with the different content providers connected to the different internet exchange points. That's one. The second one is that in situations whereby which the data centers themselves set up an internet exchange point in order to attract people into the data center, sometimes because it's their own data center, they tend to favor their own internet exchange point in such a way that when you come to the data center, they give you a co-hosting facility bundled with peering at the exchange point. Meanwhile, if you are a carrier-neutral exchange point and you are co-located with them, they might charge for cross-connect fees, and for their own, they don't charge for cross-connect fees. And in such situations, I keep telling them that if you want really the ecosystem to grow, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. If you are given your own internet exchange point some of those privileges, provide it to the community-driven internet exchange point. So in Nigeria, I have reasonably seen the compliance. Another thing is some of the exchange points owned by the data centers, they provide free peering. They don't charge, while we charge for that, because their own is that they make money off the co-location cost, while the peering is literally just a value add to them. So, but in such situations, we always make sure that they understand that if they kill the main exchange point, it means it will also affect them eventually. To your second question regarding content, to be honest with you, Africa has huge content. Unfortunately, we are not hosting it locally. So for Nigeria, for example, we are leading in Africa when it comes to the movie industry. We have channels on DSTV that are running 24/7 on all those videos. Imagine if all those are hosted in Nigeria. The same thing with the music industry. We have huge educational institutions that all of them are hosting their information outside. And some of them are not hosting their information at all. So for example, when you graduate, you produce a project thesis, and up to tomorrow, they are doing it hard copy. Why can't we host all these things online in local data centers? So the thing is, the government themselves really need to push for this, because if we don't do this, the consequences are much. These global disruptions in 2024, in March 14th, I think there was a submarine cable failure where 3 submarine cables failed. In Ghana, people had major issues. We are totally reliant on online services for our day-to-day living. If somebody should sabotage all these submarine cables, people know where they are. If intentionally they want to disrupt, where are we as Africans when all our information, critical information, is hosted outside? You can no longer do banking, you can no longer do anything because all your services are hosted outside. So it's important to domesticate so that we give businesses to those data centers. Thank you.
+1.
Hi, it's Paul. I understand the motivation for wanting bilateral rather than multilateral peering. That's fine. I understand, and I'm supportive of the extent to which content providers and so on will want a certain level of technical and, in some instances, content provider specific configuration knowledge from the service providers before they peer. I don't understand any justification for thresholds or the like. I think that I think becomes a form of commercial gatekeeping that is problematic. What I also am battling to understand is we've got gatherings like this happening at least 3 times a year where you've got large audiences from the technical community and so on and so forth. I'm yet to see the content providers having workshops or having opportunities at which that information is able to be exchanged. I'm, quite honestly, I don't see why we don't have a situation where, this would be a wonderful venue to do it, why we don't have the content providers coming into Africa, bringing some of their technical teams, they can bring their legal and commercial, which I'll mention in a minute, and having the African community and the technical guys coming across, getting that right and getting those peerings done on proper mutual terms. And like I say, you can bring in the commercial and the legal guys, because if there's any conflict or dispute resolution that's needed, we can just have some sessions next door and let the Lions act as the mediators or adjudicators. I'm just genuinely seeing a slight problem with yes, there are legitimate reasons why the content providers are scaling back and pulling back, but the genuine response to that would be become more involved in the continent, and that I'm not seeing happening.
Can I take that? Yes. We have, at least for Kenya, we have made an effort to try and get the content and cloud service providers into meetings. During one of the ITW, the previous ITWs, we've had a parallel session for data centers, cloud service providers, and content providers, and we tried to get the Kenyan participants in. For this particular AIS, we did, again, try to get the content. The cloud guys, I think we've managed to get a number in, we're getting their attention. The content guys, it's still work. It's part of the effort we do as a continent for capacity building and getting them to understand why it's important for them to be part of the conversation and why we need them in the room. Because we tell them, okay, the connectivity guys are the pipes. You're the water running through the pipes. Can you come in so that we have a conversation and see how to make this better? And that is something that we need to continue doing. And I think we're getting to a point where I believe in the near future, we will have representation from the filmmakers of Nigeria and the music industry across the continent, and the broadcasters coming in for this conversation, because they are also developing a lot of content, African content, and that we're asking, where is it? It is stored abroad. One of the things that we know we've had to do for KXP, for example, is visiting content makers, local content developers and organizations, asking them, explaining what we do at KXP, and asking them to bring that content into KXP. But we realize it is a long journey, of course, not as long as the 10 years, but we're getting there. And I'm sure we will be able to get them into these meeting rooms in the near future.
Maybe that's an idea for the upcoming African Peering Forum. Let's bring the broadcasters and the content providers.
But we need to have also topics that invite them. Of course. And so as we, for anyone who volunteers to develop a program for any of our meetings, we need to make sure that the program is holistic enough to ensure everyone is able to participate. Because when they look at an agenda and they don't see how they fit into it, there's no reason for them to come.
Of course, yeah.
They'll say, Fiona, I want to come, but to discuss what? All this is connectivity.
Yes.
Can our peering conversations and connectivity conversations begin to go into content topics?
Yes. Let me ask the gentleman to ask his question, and then we will welcome two gentlemen. Yes.
This is Ade again. I see two issues here. One is the technical issue, which I would say, like Mr. Rudman has said, but I think that's an easy task to surmount, because from experience, I know if you set up a router as an exchange point, you can set up a router and pair with these content providers and then do remote pairing with your peers. However, that brings another issue. That means the exchange will have to transition from a natural layer 2 network to an hybrid transit. Unfortunately, I'm not sure of how many exchanges have the technicalities to handle that level of transitioning. Now, that's one, that is technical. Now, the second one is more commercial, and which I don't think we've spoken about. Now, there's a trend of content service providers asking operators or whoever wants to peer to have an account, to have a commercial account. For example, you open an Azure account before you can peer with Microsoft. You open, there's the Google ISP portal. I'm not sure if they've commercialized that now, but there is now a need to have some form of account before you can establish peering.
I think we have reached end of time now, so this is
all right.
excellent conversation for the coffee break, which is coming just after. Sorry. All right. Say that again. Yeah, please ask a question, but we will answer that in the break. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Edwino da Rocha from Angola. I will just make a small question to Dr. Irish. He spoke about related with the cross connection. My question is, how can we avoid or reduce the cross connection cost on the data centers?
Yeah, that's a big question for another debate. But thank you. I would like to thank our panelists. Please, a round of applause to them all. Thank you very much. And thank you to Dr. Chris as well, online.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Wasn't the moderator good?